if we do have this financial crash, which I believe we will have before the election, there won't be an election.
Our mission at SD Bullion is clear. The lowest cost gold and silver available online. While we do not have pretty blue boxes, free shipping, 4% credit card fees, or glamorous gold and silver infomercials, SD Bullion has the lowest prices that may save you hundreds on your next order. So before you make your next investment, do the math and join the over 15,000 new customers who have recently made the switch to SD Bullion. Why pay more?
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with FinanceAndLiberty.com, and back with us today is BIX WEIR from RoadToRuta.com. BIX, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's nice to be here, Elijah.
All right, well, I'd first like to discuss about your new book. Did you want to discuss a little bit about it? I guess just in general to start with?
Yeah, sure. It's the third in a kind of a series of books about the conspiracy behind gold, silver, and Bitcoin and the meaning of what's going on these days. This one's called The Road Awakens. The first two are kind of how we got here and what's going on behind the scenes. This one is kind of where we go from here. How do we get out of this mess and what's going to happen when all this artificial manipulation is removed? And that's where I believe we are is around the cusp of removing that the artificial manipulation so that we can have free markets once again. Hopefully, I think it's happening, but it's going to be a rough ride to get there.
Definitely. And you've talked about in the book how, you expected this to happen much sooner. And chapter 1 is titled The Wait. Did you want to discuss a little bit about the wait and why it is taking so long for the good guys to destroy the system? Did you want to discuss a little bit about why it's taking so long?
Sure. When I first got into this, probably 1999, 2000, I was always, it was the banksters against the guys at GATA, and we were fighting the fights. And, we didn't have that big picture that we do now, that there's a lot of government intervention and if not all of it is run by the U.S. government, working together with other governments these days. The Road to Ruta theory came about when the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston released a few articles on New Year's Day in 2007. And in these articles, they showed a plan to basically destroy the system by building it up so big, printing as much money as possible, so that they build it so big it would crash upon itself. And that's kind of what they're doing right now. There is no attempt to stop the money printing and the amount of the size of the bubbles that are being built. So in 2007, I came out and said, this is about to happen. And that was their plan. And that was all the Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and the crash of 2008. That was a real strong attempt to take down the system. And as a matter of fact, Hank Paulson went to Congress and said, we're 30 minutes away from the entire monetary system imploding, and you got to bail us out for $700 billion, which at first the U.S. said no. The Congress stood up and said no, and the stock market crashed another couple thousand points. But then they came back and said, fine, we'll bail it out again. Oh, and by the way, you can have your $700 billion. And I think Obama added on another bill of free money for another $1 trillion on top of that. And then ever since then, it's been growing the bubble bigger and bigger. Right now, I believe that the final takedown has begun. I believe it started in August with the 1,000-point hit that the stock market took intraday, the largest stock market drop in history. And it is continuing to this day. It's going to get worse and worse. They're slamming the price of oil down. So now all these banks have really, really toxic assets on their balance sheets. They got rid of most of their mortgage-backed derivatives, which were very, very toxic, and they gave them mainly to the Fed. And now they have all these toxic oil and gas assets, and this is the last of the bubble, I believe, because all the other bubbles are blowing as well, which is the sovereign debt bubble, and you see that going on in Greece, and the large derivative holders are really, really in trouble, especially Deutsche Bank, the largest derivative holder in the world. Their stock prices just plummeted, and there's rumors going all around that the collapse of Deutsche Bank there will be nothing standing in its wake because there's 75 or it's either 75 or 80 trillion in derivatives that they hold currently. And they're kind of like the dumping spot for all the bad derivatives now. So that's what's going on. The good guys, as I call them, the people are trying to take down these bankers. They are trying to do it in a way that will be least disruptive to the people. And part of that has to do with the slow takedown of the stock market so that people can get out and get their hands on something more tangible than these electronic blips that are in their monthly statements from their TD Ameritrade or Schwab account. None of these shares are legit. They trade at least 10 times per day. Most of these shares are just trading back and forth with no real ownership, changing hands, no change of contracts, no settlement of cash or change of ownership. And it's a musical chairs with very few seats available, but thousands, if not millions of people holding these literally worthless pieces of stock that everybody has, 10 claims to the same stock certificate, which you can't even get anymore thanks to the DTCC. So it's a mess, and the only way that they're going to get out of it is to crash the whole system, and that's kind of what's going on with Deutsche Bank and the crash of the oil markets and things like that. So we're in for a really rough ride this year, and that's what the first chapter is about. And the book goes on to a lot of other subjects. Silver obviously is a big part of it, but Bitcoin as well, and other ways around the fiat money system.
So you said that the good guys, as you call them, are trying to delay the transition and kind of have the collapse be a slow one so that people can get out of the stock market. But in the end, someone has to be holding the bag, right? Someone has to be the loser. And it seems like the little guy always loses. So who do you see this time to be the ones holding the bag?
Well, I see anybody with a paper asset that they believe is wealth will be holding the bag, which is everybody. I mean, that's where the wealth of these rich and powerful comes from. Those are all electronic assets, and their stocks and their bonds and things like that. Yes, they have some gold and silver. Some of the smarter ones are getting more and more physical, which is good for them. And if you're smart enough to figure that out, you and I figured it out a long time ago. But there's more and more people that are looking towards getting their assets out of the electronic system. But if you have a failure of one of these too big to fail banks, and I use Deutsche Bank as the current example because they're probably the largest derivative holder, but there's nothing that will survive that. Not one electronic blip will survive the crashing of Deutsche Bank because there's so many counterparties to these derivatives. And everybody's hedging their position, and they'll tell you, well, no, this is a balanced position because I have a buy and a sell, I've got a short and a long, and everything kind of balances out. Well, that's true as long as the system's working properly. When you have a large holder of one of the other sides of that transaction, like Deutsche Bank going down, we saw it with AIG, which was much smaller than Deutsche Bank, but it almost took down the entire system. They had to throw tens of billions of dollars at each one of the banks just to prop them up. Imagine what would happen if Deutsche Bank goes down with 80 billion and then all their counterparties, the hedges that they've put on are all of a sudden worthless. That's kind of where we're getting to. So yeah, there will be winners and losers, but pretty much the winner will be the largest debtor nation, which is the United States. We have the most debt out of any country in the world, and everybody who has debt pretty much will be a winner because when electronic assets go, so do electronic debts. And banks can't, call in your house and say, well, we've lost all your checking and savings account, but we own your house and we're going to call your mortgage, even though you can't pay for your monthly payment. The people aren't going to stand for it. It'll hit a point where it's so ridiculous what they're asking for that the people will finally figure out that we do have the power to say no to these banksters. And that's kind of where it'll come. Is that will we bail out the banks again? They'll come to Congress and they'll scare you into saying you're going to lose everything that you own. Yes, we will lose everything that we own on the electronic side, but we'll lose something even more beneficial to us. We will lose all the electronic debt as well. So at that point, the plan is from the Federal Reserve Bank themselves is to reallocate money according to Social Security balances. And it's the fairest way. That way, the people, this is just in the United States, every other country, a lot of them already have plans in place. But just in the U.S., that is the plan, is to look at the Social Security balances. That's kind of how much you've paid into the system so far in your working life within the United States, and then allocate money partially according to that. So, yes, the rich people will get more money if they paid more into Social Security. And this would be a different kind of money. It won't be the Federal Reserve notes. It'll be a treasury note or even a gold or silver backed note, or more than likely, there will be a convertible gold and silver note, meaning you can go to a bank and convert it 1-to-1 for the amount of gold or silver that's on the face of that bill. And that's what the Federal Reserve publications that came out in 2007, that's what they said. There's pictures of a kid cashing in gold coins at a bank for paper money, things like that. And the booklet, the Road to Ruta instruction guide, it's called, it talks about all this stuff. It talks about the need for a gold backing of a currency because of scarcity. And all these books are all about scarcity. And any country that's given the power to print as much fiat money as they want have always printed too much and always destroyed their own currency. The same thing happened with us in 1971 when we went off the gold standard. And it's just the control of the commodity prices through the computer rigging is the only thing that's maintained this game for so long. But now the U.S. is ready to end it. And so are a lot of countries, China, Russia. Everybody's just waiting for that final moment to say, finally, the banking cabal is gone and we can get on with some kind of sanity in the world.
Now, in your book, you also discuss, besides there being these good guys, as you call them, there's also bad guys. Did you want to discuss a little bit about this? And you also discuss about some of their secret plans for 2016. Did you want to get into some of those?
Yeah, sure. And it's really interesting. For those of listeners who are into the conspiracy stuff and saw the 2015 Economist magazine cover with the arrows in the ground by the Cheshire Cat and the picture in the Louvre and the soccer ball, everything related to that terrorist attack in France, with the dates on the arrow, on the end of the arrows, stuff like that is, yes, it was foreshadowed and everybody was looking for what could it be? And that was a huge kind of aha moment for people to say, this Economist magazine, which is owned by the Rothschild family, they knew ahead of time. And a lot of people saying they actually pulled it off and they're the ones who did it. Is it a false flag? Is it a real flag? There's another camp, which I'm kind of learning more about, is the camp that has these situations where people can predict the future more than we know. And perhaps it's not necessarily them causing it, but them knowing about it beforehand and leaving hints for people to see. I don't know which one it is, but the new Economist magazine, it has this stuff all over it. And some of the real juicy stuff is in the inside of this magazine. It's called The Year in 2016. I talk about it at the very end of my book as a kind of an add-on, special report. And it's not necessarily the magazine cover that has, Hillary, which is obviously the bad guy's choice for president. But it always also on the inside of it has this huge calendar of events with this very chaotic picture. All kinds of things are shown there, including wars in the sky. Those of you who've studied Project Bluebeam and the government's plans to have fake some kind of alien invasion will get a kick out of that. But there's also stuff that hit right in the Road to Ruta sweet spot, especially the hidden gold mines and the hidden oil fields in the United States. In this picture, they show tanks, these gold tanks going into a gold mountain. And right above it says, go national parks for the U.S. That's where the U.S. hides most of its natural resources and is in national parks. And I've talked a lot about the gigantic gold find that was found in the Grand Canyon back in the early 1900s. You still cannot get in there. I've had people tell me that they have been there and they've been escorted out very swiftly by the U.S. Marines. And this is right in the middle of the Grand Canyon. You wouldn't even know it. It's kind of near where all those Egyptian named mountains are. Really interesting stuff. But there it is, right in the middle of The Economist magazine. It has these gold tanks going into the side of this mountain. And in the gold cave above it, it says exit with a red line through it as a no exit. So I think there's a lot of, when you relate it back to, well, how could that happen these days? Well, if the United States defaults or destroys the system by printing too much money, there'll be a lot of angry people at us. And a lot of people who hold U.S. dollars will be saying, hey, you can't do this. When we're mad at you, oh, by the way, we also know you've been hiding all these resources in the ground. We're not necessarily going to invade your cities, but we might come in and invade your secret hidden gold mine in the Grand Canyon or the one in Chocolate Mountain in California. That kind of stuff. And these are the plans of the bad guys. I want to make that very clear that The Economist magazine, the hidden stuff you find there is always the plan of the bad guys. And there are good guys that are working to take these bad guys out. So my hope is that none of this happens. My fear is that, yeah, the bad guys have won for the last couple hundred years in the United States. If there's another financial crash, when there's another financial crash, and they come to Congress and say, you got to bail us out again. If we do bail them out again, you can pretty much chalk that up for the bad guys winning. And that's the point where, all the conspiracy guys will probably be right with the one world, the new world order and the one world government and all that. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think nobody in the United States would allow their congressman to bail anybody out ever again. Everybody is so livid about how it happened last time. And you notice there's all these movies coming out right now about what happened, like The Big Short, and there's a couple other movies that truthfully they're put there for a reason, and that's to get everybody's anger up, so that when the time comes for the people of the United States to stand up and say no more, we will have the backbone to do it.
Now, you mentioned the 2016 election, how Hillary is the candidate for the bad guys. Did you want to discuss a little bit about this? Because I've heard a lot of people predicting the outcome of the 2016 election. It seems that it's going to be a pretty big win for Hillary Clinton. What do you see happening? I guess you see it differently?
I do. I mean, obviously, Hillary is the one that the controllers want in there. That is clear to me. And truthfully, if the good guys get their way, they're gonna bring charges against Hillary at some point. And when that happens, they have tons of proof that she's done so many horrible things, completely illegal, completely against the law. And when you get to the darker stuff of what the Bill and Hillary have been doing, it's just horrific if you want to go down that path. So they have plenty to bust her on. And, truthfully, where I am right now is if we do have this financial crash, which I believe we will have before the election, there won't be an election. If you take away the electronic assets of everybody in the world through one of these derivative meltdowns, first of all, Hillary's going to have no money to pay her henchmen. Trump will have no money, and hopefully, I believe that it'll be chaos. Yes, granted, there's no way around that. But at this point of chaos, I think the good guys will take out a lot of these bad players. For example, Hillary Clinton. They will expose what she's been doing and how long she's been doing it for, and how many people have died in her wake, as well as all the easy stuff to nail her for, Benghazi and destroying her private server and things like that. All of those are she can go to jail for them. She should go to jail. But I do think I see a lot of chaos coming in this election period because there will be so many other crazy things to deal with. I don't see a normal election happening. First of all, no one will have any money to promote their agenda. So there will be no Team Hillary and no Team Trump and no Team Bernie. It'll be, okay, how are we going to move forward from this point on? That's when I think the time is very ripe for someone who would serve our nation well. Somebody who was smart and trustworthy, would be demanded by the people this time. I mean, I really do think that if we can get out of this debt paradigm and get these people off our back and actually try them for their crimes, that, yeah, we could have. There are great people in the United States that could stand up and take control of our country and lead us in a proper way, and truth and justice for all. They just can't do it in this environment, in the environment of the two-party system and controlled by the money powers. But you crash the monetary system, and that two-party system is gone, and we really do have. I mean, can you imagine how many people would be jumping up and down saying, we want someone who's not going to lie to us anymore. We want someone who's going to be an upstanding citizen. Raise your hand if you're out there, because we need you now. And I do think there are many people who could come forward to take key positions in the U.S. government, if not as president and leading the government as a transition type of government until we get through this messy part about transitioning the monetary system.
So if you're saying that the collapse is going to be so bad that the 2016 election won't even happen, how do you see that society would even function? I mean, if it's gonna get that bad where they'd actually cancel the election or they wouldn't be able to do it, how is anybody going to get organized enough in order to become president? I just don't see how that could happen.
Well, and you're right. And I mean, if you look at the monetary system, and that's why the banks have been bailed out every time, is they've got us in the situation where we are so dependent on the current fiat monetary system as the kind of the blood of the nation. That's what's going to end. So I don't know if people will even care about who's president, because the federal government won't have much power at all. It'll come down to local governments and local people trying to take care of themselves and get back on track. And there will be a chaotic transition time. There's talk that people in the military are ready to not have a coup, but at least take temporary control of certain things, because our government is completely out of control, and there are people within it who need to be removed, and removed quickly. And I do think we can have a special election, even if it's, if we're looking at a collapse in March, April timeframe of the monetary system, they'd probably do a special election, come June, July, just because you're going to need some leadership. But at first, you got to take care of the issues at hand. Make sure everybody has enough food and water and power, and bring all our troops home and all that. I mean, this is going to be a global issue, because if the U.S. monetary system collapses, which is it's still the world's reserve currency, then all of them collapse. So we're all in this boat together. I think it will be very, the grassroots will start up locally. And I think that's why they're trying to get guns in everybody's hands these days, is that you don't have just a few people with guns. You've got everybody with a gun, and everybody with a gun is, believe it or not, is actually more control than just a few crazies with a gun. So I think, a lot of the false flags and, the gun threats to take away your guns and take away your ammo, you notice that no bills are ever passed to do that. And, there's a lot of talk of it. But every time there's talk of it, what happens? Gun sales go through the roof. I have no doubt that our government and many governments around the world are trying to arm their population. Because if everybody had a gun, believe it or not, that would be a lot safer than just a few having guns. So yeah, I mean, I'm the first one to raise my hand and say this transition is going to be crazy, and a lot of people are going to die. There's no doubt about it. But they are trying to smooth out the transition. And it's not just the stock market. And I talked about that briefly, but it's more, okay, how are we going to make sure the power stays on? How are we going to get people back up and running? How are we going to get the economy back, or even the basics to the people, the food and the water and shelter? And it's going to be tough. And then on top of all that, our planet is changing. I talk about this in the book as well. And our planet is changing. You look at the sun; it's bright white, and nobody likes to talk about it, but the sun is heating up, and I do believe the Earth is expanding, as many people have, not many, but some in the conspiracy side have shown how, if you shrink down all the land masses in the world, they all fit together in a perfect ball, and they break apart because the Earth is expanding, and that's a natural part of how the Earth evolves, and a lot of the chemtrails has to do with that. And so everything is changing. You might notice that the weather is changing as well. Winds are getting a lot more fierce, and the storms are getting worse. So we're going to have to be dealing with a whole lot of stuff going forward. The key for our battle is to start by taking out these bad guys who do not have our best interest in mind. And once we do that, we're problem solvers. People in the United States can handle this. We just have to get rid of these people who think we're little kids and we can't handle anything. So we have to, control gold, control silver, control the price of everything. Make sure everybody has food. The reality is we're grown-ups, and it's time for the people of the United States to take charge of their own lives and say, no, our government was not supposed to be there to give us everything. It's like, why would we work if our, Bernie Sanders gets in and says, oh, everybody gets everything free? There's no incentive to work at all. And, that's the big problem. And the bigger the government gets, the more waste and abuse, and the more reliant you are on your government. And that's not what America is. And I don't think that's what America will be going forward after the crash. But we got to get these bad guys out first. And the only way to do that is to take away their power. And the way their center of power is the unbacked fiat money, because they have it all, they control it all, they print it all, and that's where they get their power. So once that's gone, then we can say, okay, you don't have money to hire henchmen anymore. Are you a worthy leader? Are you a worthy candidate? Attorney General. Who should be the Attorney General? Someone who upholds the law. The Supreme Court. Are any of them, legit anymore? Do they ever stand up for the Constitution and say, "Oh my God, this is crazy what we've been ruling over the past 50 years"? Let's go back to the basic foundation. And I have a whole chapter in my book saying, we don't have a problem in the United States with how our system is constructed. We have a problem that we're not following the construction. We're not following the founding fathers' beliefs and documents. And it's very simple. If you just go back to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the founding documents that made us a great country back then have been subverted. And all we need to do, and this is why I think the United States will lead the way here, is that we have that to fall back on. And we, believe it or not, we still have a lot of patriotism in America, just not towards our government and the people who are running it. But if you give the people the right to stand up and say, hey, we believe in the Constitution and we're going to fight for it, they're going to fight till kingdom come. And that's what I'm excited about. But it's not going to be easy at all.
No, you discuss in the book that there might be war in the United States. Did you want to discuss a little bit about this?
Yeah, that part is not a civil war that I'm talking about in that chapter. It's other countries invading us for our natural resources that we have hidden away. And this is a plan of the bad guys, and what they show in the Economist magazine, those tanks going into that mountain of gold. That's the kind of stuff that the bad guys want. If they're still in charge, they're going to get, Russia and China and anybody who holds the U.S. dollar to say, hey, you guys screwed with us and you're giving us nothing in return. We're going to go into your country and we're going to take your gold. We're going to take your silver. We're going to take over your oil fields. And, because your government is defunct now that you can't print your money like it's going out of style, you've, basically arrested all your bad leaders. We're going to come in and we're going to take over. That's what the bad guys want. And I don't think that's going to happen, but it's a possibility if we don't stand up and say no more bailouts. And that's the key. We just got to say no, because they're going to come to Congress and they're going to say we need a bailout, and it's up to us now. And if we don't say no, you're looking at the New World Order, kicking in really quickly.
So did you want to describe a little bit about what you see that looking like if the good guys don't win and you say, the New World Order arrives? I know a lot of people throw around that term New World Order, but specifically, what do you mean by that? Well,
it's all those conspiracy bad things that happen. The one world government, the one world currency. If we have a crash of the currencies, the bad guys are gonna try to go to cashless society. If you go to cashless society, you have no rights. You are tracked every time you buy a piece of bubble gum. They're gonna track you, and they're gonna control you, and they're gonna watch you. And anytime you step out of line, they're gonna jump in. Or if they don't like you, if you disagree with them, they'll cut you off. All they have to do is remove your PIN number with a click of a mouse, and that's the kind of thing that they want. It'll be martial law. Now, martial law is an interesting, thing, because I think even if the good guys are in charge after the crash, there's going to be a time when we might even need martial law with the good guys running it. We need someone to arrest the bad guys, is my take on the martial law. But it will be a void of leadership, and we will need there. But the good thing is, here's the good thing. And I've talked about this a lot because it's what all the publications from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston are saying, is that we've been planning this since the 1960s. This is not a new thing. This transition has been held off for so long, and it's always been the plan to, they call it the golden age, to get into that golden age where we literally use gold again as money. Gold didn't fail as a form of money. It was the abuse of the gold standard that failed. So that there's been a plan on how to do it. And, a lot of people have, supposedly seen this plan, or one of many plans, but it has to do with taking out those people who control us, and mainly from the banking powers. And when you do that, you remove their power. It's not like they're, some Arnold Schwarzenegger, great strong person going to beat us up. They get their power from the control of money, and their people. The minute their mercenaries don't get paid, they don't work for them anymore. There's no love there. It's a payment situation. So that's kind of, hopefully these good guys that I keep talking about that publish the stuff in the Federal Reserve, and you can see it also. It's written right on the $100 bill that the citizens reserve the right to overthrow their government when it gets out of control. They didn't write that in gold on the $100 bill for nothing. That's the plan. So yeah, I think no doubt it'll be crazy, but I believe cooler heads will prevail for the most part. I do recommend people stocking up on some food and water to get you through, weeks or months if you need it. If not for survival, at least for, not having to wait in line for your dinner every day. So yeah, that's kind of what I see happening, and you can see it every day in the markets. Keep an eye on companies like Glencore and Trafigura, who are the gold and silver riggers, on the physical side, and the LBMA coming out with their phony numbers so everybody could see it. That was done on purpose. They need to shut that exchange down because people are starting to say, well, I want physical, and supposedly you're supposed to be the place to get physical, and according to the LBMA, over 100 billion ounces trades every year of physical silver. Which is crazy. That number is so ridiculous. But hey, it's what the COMEX, when the CFTC did their 3 investigations on silver manipulation, that was their conclusion. It can't be manipulated because it matches the LBMA, and the LBMA is a physical market. That was their conclusion. Now what are they going to say? Now that the LBMA is seen for the corrupt institution that it is, there is no excuse for the manipulation. So that it's kind of all breaking down. I expect to see the LBMA and the COMEX shut down, hopefully April, May timeframe, but at least by September. And China, the Shanghai Silver Exchange, I believe, is opening up in April, just on time. So it's kind of being coordinated by everybody who knows what's going on at the top. But we'll find out, right?
Now, before we let you go, I just wanted to touch on one last subject. You also discuss in your book the future of silver. Did you want to expand a little bit on what will we be using silver for in the future after the crash, and how much do you see it being worth?
You want me to give away all the good, juicy parts of the book? No, I'm glad to do that. I've said it a million times. There are certain uses for silver. Like right now, it's mainly used as an industrial metal. When the fiat monetary system crashes, the most likely candidate for money is gold and silver coin. You don't have to rewrite the Constitution for it. It's all right there. It's easy to go back to. And, people within the United States, it'll seem weird at first, but then it'll be a little more normal. Having said that, if you're going to use silver as money, for example, you're going to not be able to use it in a lot of these technologies because it'll be too expensive. It'll be too valuable as a use of money, and it'll kind of flip-flop back, because before, like the 1900s, silver wasn't used in electronics because we didn't have electronics. The problem is that all that silver that's been used in electronics for the last 60, 70 years is in such little pieces in landfills around the world, you can't recycle it anymore. So I think it was, if you believe the mainstream numbers, it's like 50 billion ounces had been mined and was available in 1950. And now it's, maybe a couple billion ounces. Total silver, people are estimating it 5 billion ounces above ground, or 6 billion ounces, which is nothing. I mean, especially at, $15 silver, which is ridiculous where we are right now. So yeah, as the transition happens, people will recognize that, well, number one, the key is that the unbacked fiat money will be dead. And that's the real kicker for silver. And silver and gold will be the obvious substitute. And Bitcoin. I'm not forgetting about Bitcoin. I'm a big Bitcoin fan. I'm not as big a fan as Bitcoin as I am of silver, but Bitcoin has its uses in various other things as well, just like silver. So yeah, there'll be a lot of things that'll go up in price. For, flat screen TVs, if they still want to use silver, it's going to go up a lot in price, and cell phones and things like that. We're going to stop throwing silver away is what we're going to be doing, and using silver as money. And, a silver dime used to be a full day's work in America for your average worker. I think it'll be, a week's worth of work because of all the silver that is now missing and gone and will never come back. I see a silver to gold ratio beginning probably 1 ounce of gold will buy 2 ounces of silver, a 2-to-1 ratio in the beginning. And then it'll go more like 4-to-1. I think in the ground it's around 8-to-1. But you're going to be using silver as money, as well as it's still going to have, you're not going to give up your iPhone. You're just going to have to pay more for it. So a lot of silver is still going to go into industrial applications. So that's kind of the future, and there's a lot more in the book. I talk about kind of where it can go from there. And then, believe it or not, in book 2, I talk about a future without the need for money. And that gets into the theory of like 3D printing and replicators like they have in Star Wars. The more that technology advances, do we really need money if there is a way to create the basic necessities of life, food, clothing, water, out of the air, out of the elements? Is there a need for money at that? Now, I don't think that's going to happen within the next 10 or 20 years, but I do see that in the future. I think as our society advances and less energy is needed to make the things that we're inventing all kinds of things these days with computers. And we have that technology is going faster and faster and faster. Within the next 30 or 40 years, we will be able to create replicators that take molecules and create certain things that we need. And and then there won't be a need for money unless, who would need money if you have everything you need? We can spend our time doing different things that we like to do and following our dreams instead of following, making a living for the man type of thing. So that gets into that. That's kind of the far out stuff I talked about in the book. And it's really interesting stuff. If you sit and think about it, the world is changing so fast with computers. I remember my first cell phone was like in 1990. And I was ahead of the time, and it was huge. Electronic money has only been around since the mid 70s. People don't realize that, this is a brand new world we live in, and it's going to change. It could go away in a blink of an eye, and it can change in a blink of an eye, and you just got to be able to go with it.
All right. Well, BIX WEIR, thank you so much for joining us today. I guess before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers, if they're interested in, probably just scratch the surface today of all the content that's in your third book you just came out with, and if they're also interested in getting your first and second books, where can they find those?
It's go to my site, roadtoruta.com, and it's the first section has got the books 1, 2, and 3 right at the top there, I think, or at least book 3, and that'll lead you to books 1 and 2. But yeah, sign up for the free emails and be excited about our future, because it's definitely going to change very soon, and you got to be prepared for at least have an inkling of what's coming down the road.
All right. Once again, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, Elijah. It was a good time.
This video was brought to you in part by ReluctantPreppers.com. Click here to watch Reluctant Prepper's latest interview with Glenda Lehman Irvin. For over 60 years, off-grid living suppliers Lehman's Hardware has been helping people who want to live a simpler life. A true pioneer as preparedness and self-sufficiency outfitters, Lehman's has been around since before prepping was even called prepping. Glenda Lehman Irvin, Vice President and Head of Marketing, joins Reluctant Preppers to answer the common question, what should I do first to get started prepping? Lehman's expert staff help each person consider their individual situation to find their own simple answer to this challenge. A heartwarming dose of experience, wisdom, and positivity, this interview restores preparedness to its family-centered place on the journey to simple living, which will leave you glad you listened in and wanting to share this interview with loved ones.